All right, it is 7:02, and we'll open the April Affordable Housing Committee meeting. Tonight we'll start with public comment, approve the minutes from the March meeting, and then we'll go through the work plan that we discussed at the last meeting, make some final edits to that, make sure that everybody agrees to it, hopefully pass that tonight. And then we'll use that conversation to kind of launch us into some of our next action items. One of the things from the last meeting we had was a request to revisit the prioritized spectrum of actions that we had worked on a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And take a look at that in terms of recommendations we may want to make regarding zoning, which is kind of to have a refresher on. And then hopefully we'll get some time for liaison updates, other business in the May agenda, and we will adjourn. Does anyone have any changes that they want to make to the agenda? Okay. Moving on then to public comment. Dave, do you have anything you want to share with us before we get started? No. You're muted if you're sharing something. You're muted.
Nothing for today. There was that seminar that I attended, so I'm going to write that up and hopefully present it at the next meeting. Is that the intention?
Yeah, my intention is to give you 15 to 30 minutes in the May agenda. And if you want more than that.
Yeah, it's a new state initiative.
Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Stacy. Is there a second? Thank you. Does anyone have any changes to the March minutes? All right, I'll take a vote then to approve the minutes as they are from the March meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Frederica. And then abstain. Was that an aye from you, Chuck?
I didn't read them.
You want to abstain?
Yeah.
You were here? That's fine.
Oh, was I not here?
You were here?
Yeah, you were here. All right. Well, I got no of it.
Okay. And then I think that's there are no no's then. Great. All right. So the last meeting we spent quite a bit of time talking about our work plan. So let me just share this. Hey, Eric.
Hey there.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. There you go.
I just realized I'm walking with my wife's phone.
Oh, no.
I got two phones. I can't even tell her I have her phone. I could be in a lot of trouble when I get home.
I hope she's not expecting an important.
We can take care of it for her.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that we went through, not everybody was at the meeting, so I just want to review roles from the last meeting. I will be chair for 1 more year, and Wayne be vice chair and clerk for the next year. And then for liaison roles, not much has changed. Stacy, you weren't here. I have you down for Energy Task Force.
Right.
Is that still okay with you?
Sure.
And then I also thought I would offer the DEI committee. You don't need to, I'll still probably attend, but if you're interested in officially being the liaison for that committee, that's cool. And if not, then that's okay. They usually meet the first Monday of every month. And they're always Zoom.
Okay. Yeah,
Don't you have things to do Monday nights in the summer?
There's always.
I've got you as the land trust. Is that still okay with you? Chuck Lacey?
Yeah, sure.
Frederica, you were here. You were still DRB. Okay. So these were kind of the big categories that we discussed, the main projects that we wanted to push for this year. Yes, I think we're gonna want to be tuned into and keeping the pressure on and being aware of what's happening with the municipal wastewater project. Maybe there are other smaller infrastructure things that we can facilitate. But I think what I heard from folks in this room was a really big push for trying to get a reserve fund together for infrastructure. And I think that should be one of the big things that we're pushing forward in the next few months. Everyone still feel the same about that? And is there anyone in the room who feels particularly passionate about it and wants to kind of take the lead on moving that forward? And what does that look like? We can discuss further, but what does it take to actually get the reserve fund in? Is that something that actually requires the select board to make a formal decision and vote on it? Does it have to go through some kind of budgetary process? Does there have to be money in it? There's lots of kind of open questions. And if we're going to push for something, let's do some research and know what we're asking for.
I believe it is a select board decision because it's a financial decision, and those all have to go through the select board. I think there is a degree of resistance isn't the right word, but reluctance to proceed. At this stage, they're waiting to see what happens with the wastewater study, the survey that's being done, which is just at the 60% now, from what I understand of it. And
Reluctance on the part of who?
on the select board.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot more around it than just saying, let's go get a reserve fund. I don't think we've done a good job as Affordable Housing Committee. I don't think the rest of the community has done a lot to really say this is something that is important to them. And so I'm not sure the select board would respond to that the way we'd like them to, which is to put it in place. But I think they would say, let's study it a little bit further. And
so let's do the studying for them so that they can't use that to kick it down the road.
Well, no, the studying that they would need is, does the town really want this?
Argue that we need to make a case for it and that we need to make a case for the usefulness of a reserve fund, even outside of and in addition to municipal wastewater, should that project be included. And I think that we've heard from small communities that either have community septics or community wells, or people who want to build small and it costs a lot to hook up to the water. I mean, there's lots of other infrastructure needs that I think are in line with infill that go beyond just municipal wastewater that a reserve fund could be used for.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Eric, you said that the select board is kind of holding off, would like to gauge the what the view of the residents of Jericho is on what? On a reserve fund or on municipal wastewater?
I believe it's wastewater right now.
Okay. So can they just kind of countermand the town plan? Isn't that kind of already something that was decided including with input from the community to be a high priority, or do you think it's just contingent on what the survey shows?
Well, it's been in the town plan off and on for 50 years.
Yeah.
And I think the reserve fund, yes, it is in the town plan. The problem is the town plan is never implemented, and there's never any sort of accountability on the part of the select board has never felt any accountability to get it done. In part because there's, so many deliverables, and for all the reasons we've discussed. I think the reserve fund came up because there was a moment in time where it needed to happen. And I think the basic issue is overall leadership. There will never be a majority of people in Jericho who want wastewater built. Very few people need it. We're talking about, a small number of people who would sign up today if it came right to their front yard. In 1997, the hookup fees were going to be $18,000 a house. And we've done surveys and haven't told people what the hookup fees would be. And so people say, yeah, sure, I'll hook up. So it's an issue that requires leadership. And we just wonder whether us sort of pecking away and saying, you gotta have a reserve fund, you gotta do this, you gotta have that. It's really, I think the issue is a lack of leadership from the select board. And I think we need to frame it and say, those of you who want to contain people of modest incomes in these small areas, it's incumbent upon you to lead, or you've got to allow people to live in more places. And there's a whole bunch of things that they need to be doing right now. We need a rich understanding of the difference between a municipal system and a district system. A municipal system and a district system. You don't need the wastewater study to know that that's an issue and that you're going to want to understand what the issues are. And those issues are broad. They have to do with, with funding and all that stuff. If it's a district system, it's time to start recruiting members of the board for the areas that you intend to build, because you're not going to build something and then just hand it over to a district. The district needs to form and then build kind of its own leadership. The complexity to building wastewater is not the technology or the ability to do it. Okay, it's all these other issues. A while ago they said, "Oh, don't worry, we got the money in ARPA. We're going to spend the ARPA money on wastewater." All the certain. I mean, the town ignored all the impact, the input from the community on what to do with ARPA, and are doing something else to a great extent, with the money. And I think to focus on the reserve fund, it's kind of one of the tasks that need to be done. But I think the real issue is to impress upon the select board. You need, you're not leading, and you need to lead, and you need to sell it to a community that by and large is filled with people who don't want it. Because
so we have identified infrastructure as one of the biggest hurdles to all of the work that we've ever wanted to do in this room. And so we need to be part of the campaign to make the need clear for all sorts of different infrastructure. And I agree that there needs to be some leadership, but let's hand them some of the campaign slogans and the selling points and
here's the portfolio of things that a leader would be working on right now.
And I think that while the reserve fund is one small little piece of a much bigger picture, it's something that we can advocate for, that we can use to provide all this other messaging that doesn't have to only serve one small bit of the town, that can serve the town wide, that doesn't have to have a whole lot of small restrictions on it, that can be used kind of broadly. And we have an opportunity now, if we use it as a reserve fund, to either ask them to do it and put it as a bylaw in the budget, or to put it on the ballot and have it voted on. And so we need to be starting to think about this now. And in a two-pronged way. One, is a reserve fund the right way to go? How do we do that? And two, the kind of messaging campaigning that you're thinking about, Chuck. We can do both of those things using this as a tool to move us forward. At least that's the conversation that I heard from you all over the last couple of months. And I agree, the select board wasn't in a position 2 months ago, and still right now sitting there is in a position where they don't want to say yes on something. And I think that that's because all of their focus is on the wastewater feasibility study, and they're not thinking broader, and they're not thinking further out than that. But there's no reason that because they're hesitating right now, we should all be hesitating and waiting to see what's going to happen.
I agree. I just think it needs to be broader than the reserve.
Well,
there's a
I'd
whole
like to
bunch of things.
propose a slightly different approach to it. We can agree that the reserve fund is a good faith investment in wastewater, and that's something that is necessary. But I wonder if we're pulling on the wrong string. And what I'm suggesting is that as the Affordable Housing Committee, we can do certain actions. So why don't we explore the idea, let's say using Front Porch Forum or some other thing, of polling the residents of Jericho? Would you be in favor of community wastewater, or something that would be specific for various developments, most of which already have that, or municipal or district wastewater, something that would be specifically for the center, for the corners, and for the riverside, and the potentially commercial district? Or would they want to see broader coverage than that with the municipal type system? And get a sense of, Chuck's right. I think if you were to put this to vote today to the members and residents of the city, of the town, I think a majority would say no, because the majority of them and these houses that are around us are probably at or just past end of life of their septics. So they just sunk $20,000, $30,000 into a new septic system. They're not going to be thrilled about having to pay taxes for everybody else on that. But if we look past that and we look at Jericho East, Foothills, Pinehurst, Starbird, Outlook Vista, all of the other developments that we have in the town where, yeah, they've got community septic, but wouldn't it be nice if the town or something else could take over that? And that might be an angle we can explore. So again, a survey of Jericho residents, and maybe we condition it with one of our goals is to increase the range of housing stock available. That requires more density, which requires some way of handling the wastewater. Would you be in favor of this? Then we can go to the select board and say, we polled, we asked, here's what they said. Now, select board, you have to do something. As opposed to, we feel this is important, so you should feel this is important too. We've got something to back it up. That's my suggestion.
I think that's a great idea. And I think we probably should do that. I'm just, thinking that to some extent this was done, maybe not specifically enough, but this was done when the town plan was created, right? I mean, wasn't wastewater one of the things that the community forum, infrastructure was one of the topics that the community forum addressed, and but maybe not with the specificity that we're looking for. So I'm not opposed to doing that. We should just, think about carefully then how do we formulate the survey question or questions.
Would we have to, because like I hear Chuck say a district or municipal, I'm not sure what that means. I don't know that many other people don't know what that is.
I agree, yes. So we have water districts right now. You and I have nothing to do with.
Yeah.
They're run by their own entity. They file their own tax return. They do their own billing. They're not located here. They have another office. They're a whole different municipality. It's not owned by the town. A municipal system would be owned by the town and financed by the town. The district system is,
The 18,000 was for if we wanted to hook to the district.
no, this is the wastewater study that is being replicated right now. It didn't make a distinction. This is from 1997. It didn't make a distinction between municipal or district system. It just said if you built this system, it costs this much. This is what it would cost, you know, per house. It didn't factor in public finance or grants or anything like that. I'm just kind of making the point that the survey work that has been done so far, that the planning commission is relying on, didn't indicate to people that it was going to cost them any money. Just said, or any specific like hookup fee. So they have kind of an enthusiastic response. There's Jericho Center, there's very few people who would sign up for it right now.
Oh, yeah.
And the so that it really is going to require leadership. And I really agree with Frederica that this is a decision that has kind of been made through an exhaustive process by the planning commission. We had known all along that it was going to require some leadership from the select board. And I think one way to frame it is you can't keep your 10-acre zone and not move on wastewater. Like, this is the deal. There's a fundamental deal made 50 years ago that we're going to restrict modest income people from most of Jericho, and we're going to build wastewater so that everybody else can live in the village centers. And we simply have not delivered on that promise. And unless people feel like they're going to lose their 10-acre zone, you're not going to have public support.
So what are you, Eric, just to get back to your, so what information are you hoping to?
I would, in an ideal world, we would have a survey out. Yes, I favor wastewater. No, I don't want wastewater. I mean, obviously more complex than that. And if we could get through Front Porch Forum, through other activities, and have it hosted on the website, which we did in the Planning Commission. We had things hosted on the town website for that. If we could get, say, 300 people to say, this is something I really want, that would be, I believe, something that the select board would have to stand up and say, oh, 300 people cared enough about this to do the survey, say what they want, and finish it up. That's a big chunk of the population.
Feel that data exists from the engagement and outreach that you all did with the town plan and or with the surveys that were sent out to the town center folks in the feasibility study?
I don't know what was going out in the wastewater feasibility study.
Survey. It was pretty much, you know.
What was that? What did
it was a while ago, but it was, you know, when was your wastewater system built? You know, is it operating? Would you be interested in signing up with, you know, a public wastewater system? How many bedrooms, maybe? You know, it was basically, you know, what have you got now? How old is it? Is it working properly? And you want to sign up for sewer at the road, basically.
Okay.
Now, when they assume these costs, are they assuming that somehow they'd be able to build something like enrichment as far as a treatment plant, or are they thinking of a community leach field?
The assignment was for a leach field, community leach field. The assignment was for below ground.
That's what they're looking for right now. They're trying to identify sites where you could do that.
And would they do like one for the center, one for the corners, one for the village up here? Because if you try to link everything together with all the piping, that would definitely cost a huge.
I don't know.
So I'm resistant to the idea for two reasons. One, because I think some of the work has been done. And two, because I think that, well, maybe two was a good reason. Two, because the idea that that the town will be partnering with some folks to launch a campaign to get this, to start this process rolling and to get town buy-in and educate the public and this, that, and the other thing. I don't want us to spend our time doing work that some of which has already been done by others, or that will in the future be done by others.
A survey risks the idea that this is an open question, and I don't think
Well,
it's
that's what I'm wondering.
I don't think it's an open question. It's like we are building them, and I don't think this is a feasibility study. It's how are we going to build them? And then if we reach the point that we're not going to build them, then we have to rezone the town.
Like, I don't think that any survey that we do is gonna do more to influence the decision and the feasibility study and the work that
Most people are going to say they don't want it.
Well, it's also,
and that's
to get the results we wanted anyway.
yeah, like I don't.
Yeah, but if that's what we get though, then the
Yeah.
select board is going to get the same thing and say, then why are we doing this?
Yeah.
The select board isn't thinking about, oh, we're gonna have to rezone everything. The select board is thinking people are happy. No one's storming the town hall with pitchforks. So let's keep doing what we're doing.
Right. I mean, we have already said in very strong language, that village center infill and densification alone will not meet our housing needs. And everything that the town is doing, right now, there's no other option. There's nothing else going on for the next year, as far as I can tell, other than trying to cram everybody into the village centers. And it's all based on somehow we have to get to either yes or no. And, you know, I guess that would be the benefit of doing a survey and a bunch of people say no, and then we have to rezone. Then we do have to rezone the town.
Yeah, I mean, I do think as the Affordable Housing Committee, we do have kind of a responsibility to advocate for this. And I think that's where you started. That's why it's on here, on your sheet of paper here. And the reason that we need to continue advocating is because the inertia is strong and the survey is, you know, delayed, and yeah, no, that is not a bad time to advocate, you know, and since we couldn't get the reserve fund done, I think that was the time for that was at the time of town meeting. I would hope that by next year when town meeting comes around, there will the survey will be done, and the survey triggers the obligation to come up with next steps within 45 days. So I think the reserve fund, you know, wouldn't be like the top of my list of what to do to advocate right now. And how do we advocate? I think, you know, we need to make it clear that the housing that everybody wants, and the fact that most people want to densify the village centers, both of those things are completely contingent on wastewater. And you know, it's been said before, it was said when we did the town plan, and it needs to be repeated and it needs to be advocated for. And the survey would be one way to do that if it doesn't backfire. And maybe there's other ways, like going to the select board and just bringing it up repeatedly. I don't know whether there's any other good ways to advocate for this. Maybe we can brainstorm some other
What
ways.
if we were to maybe talk with some other towns, or really get a good inventory, maybe talk to Dominic up in St. Albans, like so the select board has committed to action within 90 days after 90% completion of the wastewater study. Moving forward within 90 days. They've signed off on that with their signatures. Maybe if we could
Not they didn't sign off on what they were going to do though. on
That's
how
right.
and what moving forward means. It could just mean moving backwards, or it could mean not doing anything. Just
I understand.
I think that was
I-
relatively vague.
Yes, but if their intention is to move forward, here are the things you need to be doing now, in addition to passively waiting with the patience of,
Wouldn't it be awesome, though, to be able to say, if you're building an ADU, or if you're building a house that's 1,200 square feet or less in the town of Jericho before 2028, we will cover your hookup fees if you're in a water district. We will cover the fee of the application fee to the state for your septic cost. We'll cover the whatever. Wouldn't it be cool if we could, if there was a pot of money to address infrastructure at the level that this community is actually going to be building housing and the kind of housing that we're advocating for? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if you're in a broadband, dead zone and you're one of those donut holes that's going to cost however much money?
move to the village center. We got great internet.
Where the
Don't
town
force us to subsidize your
in
internet.
the next, in the next 5 years, if you can show that this is going to help us meet our housing resolution goal, we'll waive that fee for you. I think that the municipal wastewater study and program absolutely needs us championing it, absolutely needs us advocating for it and pushing for it. And pushing the people who are doing the work to actually do the work. I don't know how much more we can do other than that.
So here's a suggestion around that then that occurred to me. The average homeowner, Chuck excluded from this, and you're not the average homeowner anyway, isn't going to sit there and say, man, I really want to spend $200,000 building an affordable unit in my yacht and putting in septic or anything else like that. The average person who's going to buy any of these older lots on Route 15 isn't going to say, I'm going to tear that house down and build 10 of them. They don't have the money, the resources to do it. How about we reach out to developers, the people who would buy those properties and put up that particular type of multifamily unit, and ask them, how important is septic to your decision to buy and improve in Jericho versus doing it in Williston versus doing it in Essex versus doing it in Richmond? And if we can show the select board, there's 20 developers who would love to come down all of these older houses on Route 15 that are underutilizing the space they have. And they'd love to buy them and put up duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, whatever it is. But the impediment is
that's an interesting idea.
Because they're the ones who are going to do it. We're not going to do it. If you live in one of those houses right now, you are not going to do that. Let's get the people who will to say, select board, you're holding us back.
And so what are we doing? We're going to developers and getting them to say, this is what we need in terms of.
If we want to build in Jericho, which we do, Jericho has to have this capacity for us to do it. Unless you want us to build $800,000 homes, because that's all we can do.
So you'll let us do.
So about 2 years ago, I did a exhibition on Wolcott and Burke, and they were, I could look again and see if they actually put in the community septics, because they had gotten a grant from the state several years ago to study what would it take to put community septic in a little town like Walton, which would be similar to Jericho Center, I believe. And so if they've completed that, maybe I could get some of that and make a summary, because we talk about this, but maybe what we need to do be able to go to the select board after we do these reviews or these polling and say, like this is what these guys do. Because if they actually did put it in, which they seemed like they were on the verge of it 2 years ago, they could probably talk about, here's the costs, here's things that we had to do.
And here are all the factors that.
And here's the results. Here's the results.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can do it. Go and see what they have, because I think right now we're talking about it, but nobody really knows what it looks or feels. And we can say, here's an example if they're successful and they've actually done it, or they're in the process of digging holes and stuff, and filling them with pipes and gravel, that would be something to help reduce I think maybe the reticence, because they'd say, oh, that's what it's like.
And yes, I see the value in that. And I think that will be part of the presentations that go into the results of this study and the engineering phase and the next, I mean, this is.
I'm not sure. My impression is that the study right now is saying, here are 5 or 6 locations where the soil is suitable for on-site leach fields that would serve the 3 village centers. Pick the one you want, and we'll start talking about how we build it. Not here's what's going to happen once you do it. Not here's how much it's going to cost. These are the locations. I could be completely wrong on that, but I believe it's just we've identified by soil type and by proximity or whatever else it is. These are the best places.
Hopefully they're going to come back and say, you know what? Your densest housing is not in the village centers. and the places that really need help, a lot of them aren't in the village centers.
Actually,
but could I make, I said, you're making a convincing case about the reserve fund, that it's, we should, I think, specifically advocate for that. And then another idea would be, following on what Wayne said, is to come up with here's what you need to be looking at right now if you're going to get this done. I mean, I feel like the select board feels like as long as you've got a study going, we're good. We got a housing committee, we're good. You know, and come up with here's what you really need to be working on right now. If you're, you know, because clearly the reserve, you know, financing the reserve fund was not anywhere near their brain when they were thinking about the budget, because it's like we're very content waiting 3, 5, 6 years for this septic study. It's doing it. The longer the guy takes, the more we like him. And then I think your idea about maybe separately maybe on a different category is we learned a lot listening to Justin Willis at the meeting before last, and I came away feeling like, oh gosh, there's some good builders in town. We should really be talking to more builders, you know, wastewater or not. We should be talking to some more builders. I share the reluctance on the survey. I feel like that would take a lot of time, and I feel like advocacy is probably more impactful. Advocacy from people beyond our committees.
I kind of look at the survey as a first step of advocacy, because it tells us what we need to advocate and how to do it properly. What are the objections and how do we overcome them? That's what the survey would tell us. But anyway.
So it's a what do you need? And what are you open to? Like, what do you personally need? And then what are you open to for the town? Like, I still don't understand what information you want. Or just, would you, if we had a bond vote tomorrow, would you be in support of municipal waste?
That would be probably that's the ultimate question. If there's a bond for wastewater treatment that you may or may not benefit from, would you vote in favor of it? If municipal wastewater was available on your property or to your property, would you sign up for it?
That the first engagement that people have with this idea is an uninformed yes or no, where my knee-jerk reaction is I just scheduled Justin to come and fix my septic. I don't need it. I'm going to vote no. And that's the first impression. That's the first thing that's in my head. And now that's the position that everyone's starting from.
Yeah.
I think that we can all move forward on the assumption that that's where everyone's gonna start from, and, or that that's where everyone is gonna kind of fall anyway. So let's not put that in their head and get them rooted there, and let's think about, okay, how do we want to introduce folks to this idea and start engaging them in this conversation? And to your point, Wayne, putting images in their head of ways that it can look, that it has been successful, and how it has, you know, how that has looked.
And I think the town can't really envision doing anything big because it hasn't. And I think this town garage, hopefully it'll be successful. And it's like sort of building a little bit of muscle memory in terms of like what it takes to do something.
I mean, and maybe this is my own, maybe this is wrong. I am kind of under the assumption that if a municipal wastewater is ever going to happen, it's going to happen in Riverside, where none of the people that are going to benefit from it currently even live. And if that's the case, then this really is a campaign about getting people on board with how this is going to help Jericho. And it's not about how what I think and what this is to do with my property and where
Yeah, I don't just disagree with you. That would phrase the question as, do you believe that Jericho, the town, would benefit from municipal sewer?
Yeah, and that's where I think Frederica's point comes in too. Like, I think that we heard that you all heard in the town plan outreach that generally people think, yeah, I could see how that would benefit.
I think the question is housing, you know, and the town, okay, we're implementing the housing plan. This is part of the housing plan, you know, and I agree with Frederica. I feel like we need to act like the decision's been made. It's really about implementation and accountability.
Maybe explaining why instead of asking any questions.
Pardon?
Are you explaining why it's important?
Yeah.
For the growth.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
I've seen 2 successful front porch forum campaigns recently. And one of them was the DEI committee's campaign for Australian ballot, which took place, from what I saw, on Front Porch Forum. That's the piece I saw. And the other one was the one about the town garage, which also had like a series of posts about all kinds of aspects about the town garage, and was also successful. So, you know, maybe that's a way to go, that you start proactively, you know, planting thoughts and kind of describing what we know about how municipal wastewater can increase, or why it's necessary to increase housing.
All right. What do we feel like is a next step? What do we need to find out? What are the things that we need to kind of talk through to figure out where we want to move with infrastructure?
I believe the 60% plan is supposed to be presented to the landowners in the next imminently, whatever that means. And I would, My preference is like full speed ahead, tell everybody you got to do it and get it done now. But sometimes that creates more roadblocks than we want to experience. So I would argue that it is still important for us to, if nothing else, be conditioning the residents and voters of Jericho to the idea that this is something that's good for them personally. Your home value is going to go up as more homes get built in Jericho.
You don't have consensus in the town centers that people want a whole lot more neighbors. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, but basically most of the town treats the town centers like their own Lego sets. And you get a series of planners that come in and a series of consultants. They bring out the Lego set and they say, here's where all the houses can go. Everybody gets to keep their luxury homes, you know, if that happens. And it's going to be presented to the homeowner, you know, it's going to be presented to the, you're going to have some resistance in the village centers to this idea.
But would the location be right in the village center, or would it be adjacent to it?
It's the resistance to more housing,
Oh, period.
period.
Okay, so it's not like they're thinking people are gonna stick more houses in between your house.
I'm an outlier in Jericho Center
Yeah.
when I say I want more houses in Jericho Center.
Okay. But are they thinking someone's gonna go take your side yard and put another house there, or are they assuming it'll be some adjacent land?
Houses, new housing in Jericho Center is usually opposed. Unless it's built by someone who's been here for 35 years being built for a family member. I mean, there's a lot of new housing. Housing projects are generally opposed everywhere.
Yeah, because I see that one by Plains Road, they're lifting the roof there. That's not new house, but it's an expansion.
Yeah, that's an expansion.
Is that an ADU or just a?
It looks to me like a second story. Yeah, I don't think it's.
So let's move on
Yeah.
to zoning and regulation. So Eric, please correct me if I'm wrong. So the audit, town planner and consultant were going through the form-based code as part of the bylaw modernization and
Yes.
conducting kind of an audit of what it says, to then report to the planning commission to kind of give you all an idea of what's in there, how that fits up with complaints, feedback they've gotten. Is that right? And then
Yes, that is right.
that meeting was gonna happen last week, and got postponed to next week, right?
Yes.
And then the following planning commission meeting will be kind of a response, your all's response to that audit. My understanding is that after the audit, we, Affordable Housing Committee, have a window to listen to that audit and then provide some input and feedback. Although it's a time crunch, what was beautiful about it being last week was that I was hoping to go through all of that this week at this meeting so that then we'd have input for the next, but then it got bumped. So to recap, next week, planning commission is having a meeting where David and Linda are presenting kind of an audit of form-based code. And then
Next
7
Tuesday.
days from now.
16th.
Thank you.
Day after your taxes are due.
And then the next meeting, because April has whatever, will be May 7th, where we want to have feedback and input into the planning commission back. And of course, we don't have another meeting before that.
David the lender presenting to the planning commission. Okay.
So this is an audit of 3% of the land area of Jericho.
Yep, and we're not going to talk about how that sucks because we know it sucks.
I know, I understand that, but we should have our own agenda. And I think our own agenda needs to reflect the positions that we've taken in the past, which is that infill in the town centers is not enough. And I think that there's a bunch of things that our town can do really quickly that don't involve any money. And I think we should come up with a list of, 5 or 6 of those things. And, that have townwide impact, that have the potential to, basically the town right now is being driven by a $23,000 grant that was written before the town plan was done. And we're following that grant like rote, saying that we're going to concentrate on 3% of Jericho. And we have, these housing goals. The town has done nothing tangible to increase housing feasibility in Jericho since January 22, except write reports and plans and resolutions. And, we need to lift the ban on multifamily housing in the preponderance of Jericho. We don't need, right now, we're going to be focused on 3% of Jericho, not including meetings that have been missed.
The great thing about this is that this is our work plan for the next year, and focusing on that 3% of Jericho only consists of from today until May 7th.
Okay.
Okay. So my question is to this group, Eric will obviously be at the planning commission meeting as a planning commission member. I will be in attendance and taking notes. It's something that you can watch later if you want. My question is, how would you all as a committee like to move forward on providing them input? We have enough time, and there are enough weeks in April that we have enough time to warn another meeting, and that meeting could just be to review what happened at the audit and what that feedback is that we want. It needs to be a public meeting, and so we get together. We can do it just on Zoom. It doesn't have to happen in town hall, and just make sure that we're all on the same page. And I would suggest, but Frederica and Chuck, you can disagree with me, that Frederica and Chuck and I, as the people who have been in the zoning, and Eric, I'm not saying you because you're on the planning commission. I don't want you to have to do double time.
I'll be there anyway.
Kind of take the lead on forming what that feedback will be, so that the conversation at an additional meeting would be hopefully focused, and we could easily kind of look through and pass something as a committee. Or we could let this opportunity go by, or we can, I don't know, maybe there are other ways to handle it. But that's what I would propose, is us getting together as a committee after that meeting and banging something out that we can approve, that we can get back to Linda and David and Susan and the planning commission before May 7th.
And the select board. Yeah, I like that.
Does anyone not feel comfortable with that?
I feel comfortable with that. I just want to point out that the full site plan, I'm trying to pull it up right now, for the Old Crow logging site is around 300 units, all in when it's done.
What are you doing?
The lumber mill site in Jericho on the corner there, the fully built out is about 300 units. That's our entire goal for 10 years. And I don't know how many of them will be affordable versus market pricing, and I don't like to use the word affordable, because if you can buy it, it's affordable. For you, maybe not for other people. But there will be, I am assuming, a range of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos throughout there at different pricings. So I am not opposed to saying, let's put all of our eggs, and a bunch of our eggs in that basket, and make sure that a certain percentage of them are priced for moderate income individuals or families.
And, so do you think, are you saying that you think that those 300, whether or not those 300 units actually get built, is intimately linked to what the form-based code revision looks like? Because
from my understanding, it is, because the form-based code is requiring the structures have certain features that add cost without adding benefit, and that reduce the ability of the builder to provide variety of housing designs.
Correct.
It's what, they say they need that. They say when you have to, I mean, one of the ones that I keep jumping back on is apparently if you have a 3-story building, you need almost a 3-story roof on top of it because it has to be peaked and you can't have a flat roof.
Okay.
That just adds cost at no real benefit to anybody.
So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna put, I don't wanna deal with it now. I'll put together a doodle poll and we'll find a time that works for enough people. And we'll commit to, as a committee, listening into that audit, thinking about it. Chuck, Rodrigo, and I will kind of draft up some guiding principles, and hopefully we can approve feedback. Is that what I'm hearing from everybody? Is that okay? All right.
Yeah.
So
just one quick thing. So Eric, you're basically saying that you think that we should put our focus on the old lumber mill renovation because of the number of units there, and that's a big payback in the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, and not only that, but that ties in with wastewater because they need to have wastewater in there. And if the town can go ahead and pony up some of the money to make it easier to build that property and allow for property prices or rents to be lower because the town and through support from federal government, everything else has made it possible, that's a win. It knocks off $20,000 onto a property, the condo, that's substantial.
all right, so the other piece of zoning and regs is what you were getting at, Chuck, which is beyond the village centers and beyond the form-based code. And maybe I'm wrong. What I'm hearing you advocate for is kind of a two-pronged approach where there's, I don't know, a larger and more nuanced kind of the work that you and Frederica have already done and that we have already kind of looked at and then we can build on and finesse. In addition to that, let's come up with a list of really easy things that we can knock out and say, here, like this won't take a consultant to pass. These are obvious things that we can do. And maybe identify some of those things that are important to.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Something that common sense stuff that other towns have done that don't trigger a year-long, it's like, what would the housing committee, the planning committee, the select board, and the town administrator do if they were living in their cars right now? Like, what could they get done by July or August? Well, there's some pretty simple zoning changes that we could make, and we need that.
Zoning changes aren't going to make the buildings pop up.
They will make them legal.
They still won't, they can be legal, but it doesn't mean people are going to build them.
I understand. Right now, they are building them, and it's right. Adjusting the permitting and the zoning fees right now. It's more expensive per square foot to build a small house than a big house in terms of permitting, like drastically so. Simple stuff like that.
We have low-hanging fruit that's available to us. The commercial district is already zoned appropriately for much of those things. They don't have sewer there, which they will need. They do have a well there from the old Jericho East well, which has been abandoned, although they still own it, and you would have to buy it from them. They're right on the municipal water from what's coming up from Champlain. That's where it should go.
I'm not opposing that, but the gated community that Jericho is, we need to pull the shroud open a little bit. I mean, there's stuff that is really sort of antagonistic towards people with modest incomes. And I don't believe that we should be restricting people with modest incomes from living a rural life. I mean, Jericho, I mean, this whole approach basically assumes that children shouldn't be living in the woods. And we have to create, and we have said it over and over again, houses of all sizes and shapes, in all places, in all configurations, all over Jericho. That's in the town plan. It's in our recommendations. And I think we should, I think we should do it. It's just plain silly that someone can't build a small triplex in most of Jericho, but you can build an enormous house, just sort of whatever you want. It's cruel.
So if you look at the USDA maps, you can actually see that most of the most desirable soils follow Route 15, Brown's Trace, Ore Road, Pine Road. So if we're looking at where you don't have to worry, I was going to bring that tonight, but I have that USDA map.
Yes.
And it's amazing with the old folks that set this place up, where to put the houses. And it's like what Justin said the other month there's a place right over across the street where you can put 30 houses in and have perfect septic. So, again, like you said, the commercial districts tend to have this soil there.
But if you want to restrict housing based on septic and legitimate environmental concerns, then let's do that. But don't restrict certain kinds of housing because you're afraid of people with modest incomes. And that's where Jericho has been for many years. It's not fair that someone could build a 6-bedroom house, but not a triplex with 3 1-bedrooms. It's simply not fair. It's cruel. Pardon?
Are they condos? Because we want to be able to have people starting out to be able to, buy property and build equity, right? I mean, if I build 3 rental units, that's great for me, but I'm not helping anybody, right?
You're not helping anybody if you're building a 6-bedroom house either.
No, but I'm talking if I make 3 condos.
I understand that.
I think this is a philosophical discussion we're having that's not going to help us with where we're going.
So the kind of low-hanging fruit, common sense, do you have a timeline, a date?
I would go to when I talk to select board members, I say, just tell us what to do. I would go to the select board, I go to the planning commission. I mean, there's some
I know, but do you think that this is a kind of list that we could get together in 4 months, in 6 months?
6 weeks. We can do it when we do this next one.
6 weeks.
Whenever we're doing the feedback, do this one also.
I can't commit to that.
Okay. I mean, right now, the planning commission is not following the plan that we laid out in our recommendations, or frankly, with some of the key parts of the town plan. And I think we need to advance, certainly in parallel. I mean, why is it that if you've got 20 acres in the 10 acres, you can't build 2 houses?
So I think that the issue that at the bottom of this is that the priorities of the town, of the planning commission, of the select board are not aligning with any of this. Their priority right now is to focus on the form-based code, and they will not have an open ear for any of this any of the other proposals we have. That doesn't mean we shouldn't bring them forward, but we bring them forward and knowing that they're not going to be super responsive to that because they are focusing on something else right now. So
right.
So I think that the list that we made a year ago is still kind of the list that you're talking about. It's the multifamily housing, it's PUD, basically density incentives. We made that, we said that already, and we should certainly emphasize it again so it doesn't get lost, but we're not going to find much of an open ear is what I'm thinking.
So I'm gonna skip, sorry guys, it's not that I don't want to hear what everyone's saying. I'm watching the time. and we're only gonna get through one agenda item tonight, and that's fine. But I do want to make sure that we get through it. So I'm gonna skip down to 4, which is data collection and dissemination, and talk about the housing report, because I think that, Frederica, what you're saying is right, and that, you know, they've got, and Eric, it feels weird to say they when you're in the room, knowing that you're part of the planning commission. The planning commission I just want to acknowledge it. I don't
That's
know
all
if I make
right.
it better or worse, but
I'm completely devoted to housing committee when I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
They are somebody else.
That's right. But they have a calendar, they have a work plan that they're working from, just like we do. And whether we agree with the priorities or not, it means that we have windows of opportunity to say things where we are more likely to be heard and actions taken and not. One of the things that we as a committee are committed to doing and are expected to do is put together a housing report. And I think that what we can do is, in that housing report, which is just baseline levels, what happened in 2023 before the 5-year period starts, we give that report, and then at the end of it say, if y'all are really think that we're going to meet these 5-year goals, these are the things we got to do. This is the big picture, and lay out the work that you and Chuck have already done. We lay out the list of, and by the way, if you want to knock some things off the list, here's the things that you can get done in less than 6 months. And here's the things because we'll be in front of the select board to say that here's the feedback that we gave the planning commission on the form-based code. Because we are completely in our lane. We are doing what is expected. We are providing them with a report, and then at the end of the report saying, hey, this is reminder, these are the things that you need to do, and your affordable housing committee thinks you need to prioritize them thusly.
So that's your opportunity, and that you're saying we would present to the select board.
The planning commission and the select board, yeah.
I like that.
Refresh my memory on the housing report as it's listed in the town plan. The housing report is X number of new builds, and it's supposed to be X% will be designated as affordable to the 80 to 120, and the missing middle will be there, and then another
and then
extra.
we got
Yeah. Can we
so that we can also talk about condos, and we could talk about multi-units, and we could talk about X, Y, and Z. And so I think
what would be really useful for the planning commission would be to have really 3 columns. Permits applied for by type, construction started by type, and sales by type.
so. I've got sales by type. I've got I've requested permits. I don't know about construction started. And then the other one that I want to add to your list is certificates of occupancy.
That would be an equivalent of construction.
Finished.
It's finished construction.
That's finished construction, not started.
Yeah, that's probably better then.
Yeah.
How are you?
And then if we can, when the permit was applied, was this listed to be a rental or an owner occupied?
That I don't. I guess
Are you getting sales from the town or from Zillow?
Town should have that data.
But when you got it before, where'd you get it?
Well, the aggregated data I got from the HFA. But they don't have 2023 up yet. So I have the 2023 sales data for Jericho.
From them?
From, I don't know, some lister who sends it to my house every year. And I was like, this is great data.
Oh yeah, I get that from the realtor too. Here's all the things I sold this year.
Yeah. Well, here's not just the things she sold, but all the things that sold in Jericho.
Yeah.
And there's a nice little comparison to other towns and whatnot.
And it comes from the lister?
not the lister, the realtor,
It's a realtor who, you might get one of those too. I think it's Maythow is the name.
And any realtor
And-
can just access that data and pull it down for you.
Right.
I was gonna have Sarah do it for us.
Well, see, that's that would be MLS sales as opposed to.
Actual sales. So the tax recorder would have to record it. Because you pay a tax on when there's a property transfer tax that gets paid.
There's sales that don't make it to that list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think I think that that'll be our opportunity to sneak that in, and my hope is that I end up in front of the select board. I'm hoping to have something for us all to discuss at the May meeting and finalize in June so that I can talk to planning commission and select board in June.
Can you, when you present that, I like graphs. So here's where we are.
I am a scientist.
For the target, to achieve the target, here's the angle we should be at.
You can have a graph with the projected, sure.
We're just compared to, in this year, we should have built 35, we built 10.
Yeah.
And just throw it in somebody's face who looks at it that you are not meeting the target you set. And if you continue at this pace, you will not meet that target.
Okay, so then there's some other data stuff that we've talked about, but it's 8:15. So I want to skip around a little bit. Community education piece. Eric's really committed to an ADU forum this year. I heard you talking about
ADU
ADU
hop. The ADU hop. I think that's going to be fun.
I love it.
You're putting it together already?
I'm conceptualizing it right now. I have to get a list of ADUs. I'm probably going to put something out on Front Porch Forum saying, we'd love to have an ADU hop in conjunction with the art hop, and I think it'd just be fun.
Oh, in conjunction, so you get to draw from the art hop and.
Of course. If you can afford art, you can probably afford to put an ADU in.
Yeah, that'll be a more fun way, because I know I did that a couple of years ago. I tried to survey all the ADU people and got like one response.
Yeah.
So,
Did I respond?
Maybe you were
probably you might have been one.
You were probably the one. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but I do want to look into the VHIP program, which has a lot of like granting and funding opportunities for individuals and small developers to do ADUs and whatnot. They're launching a 2.0 program. And I do want us to learn more about what is in that 2.0 program. Is there stuff that we can be letting our neighbors know about?
They call it ADU 2.0?
No, it's VHIP, VHIP.
VHIP 2.0.
Yeah. But engagement stuff. Okay, so is there anything on here that anything on this list here that we need to remove or change?
On the engagement one or overall?
Overall, I'm just gonna give you a free for all. I can't read the list. Do the last couple.
HOAs again, is that legally something?
I mean, we've already been doing that, and I think we need to continue to do it, which is educate the community about what is exclusive, what is inclusive in an HOA, how they can go about looking up their own HOAs and making amendments and changes, and just pointing that out to folks. I think that should continue to be part of our community education that we do anytime we're in a public setting.
What is going on with the Jericho? What corporation for
Community Development Corporation?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to know? I have no idea. They are on a hiatus for a couple months. They're down to 3 members, and they are not meeting for a couple months. I think Frederica, what did you say? I can't remember what it was. Do you remember? Is it June that they're coming back?
I don't know. No, wouldn't have been me.
I don't remember. Eric mentioned it at a select board meeting that they weren't going to be meeting in April and May.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere they were on vacation. Yeah, not vacation. They were busy.
One last thing on the inclusive HOA, we talked about this last month about should people be able to bar people from changing houses to apartments and turning them into investment properties? And I had mentioned about the cost of the neighborhood I lived in California, and I actually looked up my old house, 109 South Second Street in Campbell. It was bought for $620,000 in 2012 and sold last year for 1.67 million.
Wish you'd held on to that, didn't you?
Well, we were paying $3,300 a month, but on our little block, there were 8 houses and only one was owned by a young couple. They were all rental investment property. So I'm just thinking, if you're going to build affordable housing, I did put a note here. There's lots of houses being built, but I'm seeing 44% of single family homes bought in 2023 were from private equity firms for rentals. So I guess I'm just wondering, if we want affordable houses, do we want someone like me sneaking in there and buying up the house and making it a rental?
I mean, we could use a lot more rentals in Jericho, that's for sure.
But I'm just thinking, single
long as
family
the
houses,
rent's more.
people trying to
Well,
get
yeah.
started a house. You know, it's one thing if I build a rental, but I mean,
So I agree with you that at fundamentally, if you think about it, being a landlord is you're always taking money from others, and those folks don't get to build capital. But as others have said, we do have a lot of folks that cannot afford to buy a house, and even when we build smaller units, wouldn't be able to afford to buy even a condo. And at this point need to be renters. I mean, both my kids are renters right now, and wouldn't dream of being able to afford a purchase. So I think we have almost no rental stock in Jericho, and there are people looking for rentals. So it's not wrong to build rent.
If you build a rental, like if I decide to buy a little piece of land and build a 3-unit apartment and stuff, that's one thing. My point is, if somebody starts going into residential communities and buying the houses themselves and as investment properties, and then now that tends to drive up the price of all the other houses because they're calculated based as what their investment return is, not the fact that some guy and some their partner are working their butts off to try to pay for this mortgage and have it as a home. So I think the point is that I remember you had the point about you shouldn't say you can't turn a single family home into a rental once it's existing. And I'm thinking that should be okay if you do that, because once that happens, all the prices of all the houses will go up. Just in 10 years, $1 million. Man.
Well, just even more against it.
And they put nothing into that house. The septic was bad, the windows leaked, there was no insulation, just chicken wire to keep the raccoons out. And we paid $3,300 a month for it. So there was no, but the young couple next door, they took that house, it was beautiful, fixed it all up. So anyways, I just think if you build a community that's, little starter homes, that someone like me shouldn't be able to go in and buy it and make it an investment property or think it. And if they want to say they don't, but I mean, if the people in the community say we want to keep this as a community with families, that should be okay. Because this neighborhood we live in, 20, 30 years ago, there were kids on bicycles everywhere.
Well, I think you can do that if you have some public investment involved. I don't think I question whether that's something. I'm sympathetic to the problem. I don't know how you zone that.
You don't zone, you have it as a homeowners association.
Right.
The HOA prohibits rentals of the property. Right, that's how you would get there.
There's a lot of houses in Jericho, hundreds with HOAs that say you can't rent.
Yep.
And yeah, and he's saying he wants to keep that in the HOAs.
Yeah, I think we've kind of reached a, in my view is that we reached a dead end on the HOAs, that people can form an association among each other to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, that's not an issue that yes, people can do whatever they want to do. However, the vast majority of HOAs are put in place by the original developer, who are not the people who live there, but rather who's putting up the land. And that developer is taking boilerplate HOA language and saying, instead of calling it XYZ development, it's now called ZBA development.
Yeah, I agree. We need to challenge people to change their HOAs.
And we need to challenge that to the developers, but we can also reach out to people who currently are in HOAs and ask them if they're willing, are you willing to change it? Most HOAs require unanimous to change.
Yours is unanimous?
Yes.
So what's the possibility? I mean, do you mind saying whether you think
I've never asked any of my neighbors if they care one way or the other.
And I'm sure they don't know.
They probably don't. I know that the bigger restriction is number of bedrooms allowed on the septic system.
But also no chickens, no clotheslines. I mean, you've got some.
Yeah, we've got some of those fun things too.
Yeah.
So the last work plan that we had included some kind of deadlines, a handful of hard deliverables that were tied to deadlines. Sorry, this should say spring. And I don't know how we feel about that. Think about that if you care at this point. If you feel strongly about where a certain deliverable goes.
I think a farmer's market for the summer remains a valuable thing. It's a chance for us to meet a fairly representative across, a group of Jericho residents and a bunch of Underhill ones too, and maybe even people from all the way out of town who might come by.
When is the ADU hop? So the Heinsberg one I think is in the fall, which is why I put it in the fall. But if you want to tack onto the art hop, I can't remember when that is.
Isn't that like Columbus Day weekend or something like that?
Is it? Okay, so fall.
Isn't that like Memorial Day?
Hopefully.
Around Memorial Day? Or are there
Right.
two?
The art,
Excuse me for a second.
the art open studio is in Memorial Day.
Is that different from the art hop?
The art hop is
September.
just in South Burlington, is in Burlington. And that I think I've been cold at that.
Yeah, the last one was September 8th.
What?
I've been cold, and that's good. That
That's a range of months
It doesn't
here.
narrow it down to a lot in Vermont, but it narrows it down. That's hilarious.
Is it September?
Mhm.
It's like foliage tie. Isn't it usually tied to
But art
foliage?
hop isn't in Jericho. It's the
No,
open
it's
studios, which in
South
Jericho,
End.
and that's Memorial Day.
Yeah, but they usually like.
Well, yeah. So I mean, yeah. Art hop's down in Burlington, but the open studio is the same thing. It's just a
Different time.
different word. Is there an art hop in in Jericho?
It's
I
it's the open studio, which is on Memorial Day. That is the event.
That is it. Okay. That's in May. What do they have in the fall?
At parade.
No, there's a whole bunch of open studio signs in foliage season.
Really?
People
I
come
think
by.
that it's the art hop, but yes, it is in the South End, but I think that a bunch of
Oh, I'm
towns
sure, yeah. People just kind of.
piggyback on it, yeah,
Oh, okay.
but
Diane Schulberger will know.
all right. I feel like this item is spent.
Fall Open Studio is October 4th and 5th, or 5th and 6th, sorry. So there is a fall one as well from the Vermont Crafts Council.
All right.
I knew I wasn't making shit up.
I just found one too that was like on Google, that was like October 1st and 2nd. I guess it depends on the year, but somewhere around then.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends. Let's move us. It's 8:30. I want to have some time for liaison updates and other business. I don't. JCDC hasn't been meeting.
They're supposed to have a meeting according to their agenda really soon. Sorry, I had it open just a second ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can meet again.
The DRB is supposed to, no, sorry, wrong one. You go back to the right guys there.
Oh,
Fourth Thursday of every month. And the next meeting is scheduled for May 23rd. So 2 months from now.
Oh, May, you said.
May.
Okay.
Yeah. The last meeting was January.
No, the JCDC.
Oh, Jason.
He
JCDC.
did say DRB, but he meant JCDC.
Yeah. Thank you for correcting that.
Oh,
It says they have an agenda, but there's no agenda out yet.
Frederica, do you have DRB news?
There was just one meeting and it lasted only 35 minutes and it was about property, about a subdivision, a 3-lot subdivision on Orr Road. There's currently one house there on 10 acres and they want to add 2 more houses. The only thing that got my interest was that they said it would have to be relatively small houses because of wetland restrictions. So I went into the application itself and the application said that it was going to be 4-bedroom houses. So single family, 2 single-family 4-bedroom houses. As far as wastewater and water is concerned, those 2 new houses are going to share a well, and they are each going to have their own wastewater laid out for 4 bedrooms, I assume.
And they describe the houses as small.
During the meeting itself, they said the houses would have to be relatively small because of wetlands restrictions, but in the application, there was no square footage indicated, just that it had 4 bedrooms, which doesn't sound super small to me.
Interesting. Okay.
Depends how big the bedrooms are.
It all depends.
Well, not for
And again, I mean, the opportunity to remind somebody that they should build enough wastewater capacity is still there. That at some point we could try to be systematic about that. Although we've talked about how practical that is, but at least bringing it up with future builders.
I continue to think that it's worthwhile, but is anything from conservation? Maybe
I didn't take it last month. However, it's next week, so
okay.
we'll that into. I'll put this out before next week. Waiting to include it, but I think I'll try to do the less than 5-day delay. You have.
It's not me.
So
The
executive committees, the board, whatever.
words of the state, the law.
Yeah.
Any other PC things, Eric?
No, last meeting was an executive committee, so nothing to report.
And you guys haven't seen wastewater feasibility yet? And
We have not.
You feel as strong, okay.
I will leave my opinions on that off the table.
Understood. Any other liaisons, or I'll move into other business? We talked about the audit. yeah, Dave, went to, the Vermont State Homes for All program, thing, and is gonna present that to us, at our May meeting. Where we'll take a first look at, the draft for the housing report. Report back on, the happenings in the planning commission. I've seen. Anything that you all want to see in May on the May agenda? One of the things
If we
that
can review the results of the wastewater, that'd be high up on the list if it's out.
I've got it there. Placeholder.
Yeah.
Do you know if the results are going to be released at each of the 3 meetings, or is it going to be released in advance of the 3 meetings?
If I knew the answer to that, I'd be a very happy guy.
Okay.
I don't.
One of the things that I just thought about, as we're thinking about the form-based code and the audit and talking to developers, it reminds me that Joe Flynn, was saying that he had a lot of, thoughts from a developer standpoint on form-based code and what's useful and what's not useful. And I think that the part of the conversation that we were having earlier in the evening about wanting to hear from more developers is an important one. A lot of the presentation that the consultant David did kind of about form-based code was really about like public use and aesthetics and interacting with the environment, but it didn't provide a lot of education about how developers use form-based code or what they're interested in or what they're looking for. So I think I say that because I'm going to reach out to Joe and see if he wants to get a cup of coffee and talk about that with me before we all meet to put in some feedback. But if anyone else knows any developer friends who might have some insight.
I think at that meeting that was on David's part, to me, I felt like there was an emphasis that developers just want to know the rules.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think developers just want to know the rules so they can decide whether or not to proceed. The rules can still be a barrier. And the other thing was, I was hoping that the beginning of the conversation would be, okay, how are we going to enable more people to live here? And as you say, it was again really focused on aesthetics, which
that's a good point. It was, I want to know what I can build, the predictability piece, the timeline piece, that those things were important from a developer's standpoint.
Well, yes, but it doesn't mean, I got the impression that he was kind of saying they just need to know the rules and then they'll build. I don't think that's the case. Intuitively, that's not the case. To me, anyway. I feel like they want to know the rules so they know whether they can build. It doesn't mean that just the fact that they know the rules means that they will build, and that the conversation was not rooted in what rules do we need to change or have to enable people to have the opportunity, to build. Like what changes would encourage someone to build? I think that's different than saying a developer just needs to know the rules.
Yeah, I think that's important. And also, are the rules going to be biased toward or biased against more modest, lower income dwellings?
And individual builders. I mean, if you go through some of the paragraphs in the current form-based code are just unintelligible. I mean, they're basically, and our PUDs in general are biased towards developers as opposed to someone who just wants to get a quarter acre and build a place, or an eighth of an acre, hopefully.
Yeah, but you wouldn't put a single family house in an eighth of an acre and try to get PUD rules. PUDs is for multiple units on a lot.
I understand that is true for PUDs, but in the form-based code, a lot of the well, I should have mentioned PUDs, but I have the same criticism of PUDs. And the form-based code had rules about angles and materials and stuff that would really prohibit someone from building their own house on an eighth of an acre because they simply couldn't understand it.
True. And the lot was sold as a take it all, not take pieces of it. So it wasn't going to be sold off. Well, you take an acre, you take an acre. It was, you're buying the whole thing and you're going to develop it. So the form-based code was designed for that one developer who's going to build the whole thing. It only applies to the mill of property. It doesn't apply anywhere else.
The form-based code applies to all of Riverside.
Basically,
Yeah, doesn't it?
character
It does.
zone A, which is where the old mill was, is form-based code.
It's much bigger than that.
Yeah, I
really is.
understood it to be pretty
Form-based code
much.
it's put into two different districts,
That's right.
and the majority of the form-based code applies to District 1 or District, I forget which one it is, the one that's now a vacant lot.
Boy, that's really not. I mean,
and the rest
you're right on the art hop, but I don't. I'm not gonna
Well,
give you this one.
And there is an incentive to say that if you want that whole district of Riverside to have a character cohesiveness, i.e. no IMP building blocks with no windows in it that is totally out of character with the New England view, that's what the form-based code is also designed to do. You don't want someone to put up a pillbox and to call that their house. It needs to be consistent with the look and feel of a New England village, because that's what is asked for and wanted to be in that area.
Can I just say that I
that
find
as
that
something
I
you'd like or
totally
don't like.
object to that.
That's fine.
I tend
You could
to,
object to
it's
it.
really bothered me, this piece, but
But the thing
It
is
just
that
does.
then you have all the neighbors challenging the development because they'll say you're driving my
Yep.
value of my house down. And
Well, then it should apply to everybody, then, not just, it should apply to rich people too.
It does.
No,
if you're in the light green, that's where the current code is mostly applying. If you're in the blue, we want to make sure that just because you've got a neighbor who puts up something that looks like a prison block, that you're not losing your home value because of that.
Right. I'm just saying that.
And that's what form-based code says.
I understand that.
So what's the opposition?
The opposition is, well, number one, I think it is more complicated in terms of there's 23 additional regulations on the placement of a window in that entire area.
Yes.
Okay. There is a regulation against plastic flowers on your porch. There are regulations on the dimensions of a porch. There are just all kinds of stuff that don't apply where the luxury homes are built. And that's really kind of unfair. If you're going to put in regulations, aesthetics regulations, they should not only apply to the place where you want people with modest incomes to live. That's not fair. If you're going to have aesthetic requirements like anti-pillbox or designing what you want people's houses, it's like we are so afraid what people with modest incomes are going to build. We're going to design it for them and make them live the way we think they should live, and then make them live in houses that are designed how we think they should look. And we don't give a damn if it then means it's too expensive for them to live in. I mean, let's look at what's going on. We are regulating the lives of people with modest incomes in a way that we don't regulate the wealthy people in a 10-acre zone. And I mean, it's like, it's really plain. We don't worry about whether someone on Skunk Hollow has plastic flowers in their front yard. It's illegal to have play equipment in the front yards in Riverside, except for porch swings. We don't worry about whether people on Skunk Hollow or Jericho Center or wherever rich people live, they can have play equipment in the front yard, because we don't worry about what rich people do. We worry about what people with modest incomes are going to do, because we're really afraid of what they're going to do. It's illegal it's not legal for us to forbid mobile homes anywhere. We're residential, but we forbid them in Jericho. how Jericho never got called on that, I won't know, I don't know. I mean, the statutes are clear. You can't forbid mobile homes anywhere where residences are allowed. And that's there for a reason. Because towns like Jericho used to ban them.
Well, there's a mobile home right down here, right on the corner.
I know, now you can, we banned them for 15 years.
Oh.
Until the state said you can't. And then we established a minimum home size. It was bigger than the then current mobile home, which prevented them for a little while. And then finally mobile homes got bigger than that. And that's how, so they were either there before 1959 or after 1976. And after mobile homes got bigger than Jericho's minimum housing size. We can have all diversity committees, whatever, but our zoning is clearly designed to control people with modest incomes. So,
can I ask just a question? I know we've been talking about this for months and I should probably know this, but the original intention of form-based code was to be picky about things like that, or was it to make it easier for developers to understand what they should be aiming for? I mean, or both.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that I think that people in this room have differing opinions about answering that question. I think that both can be true. It feels to me like the process that the town went through for this form-based code had a lot more to do with aesthetics and the kind of look and feel for like a new downtown. And that's kind of reflected, I think, in some of this extra stuff in the form-based code that doesn't really. I don't think it needs to be there in order to make it easier for a developer to build. But I do think that that is that form-based code can provide that kind of means for development. Because you don't, in theory, it's, the expectations are very clear. The process is very clear. And as long as you stick to exactly what's in this box, then everything gets rubber stamped and you can go. And as a developer, you don't have to worry about conditional things or going in front of a group of people and having to argue for this, that, and the other thing. You meet all these expectations, you build and you go.
And it prevents the opportunity of a neighbor to say, I don't like that. I don't like that you're going to paint it blood red. I don't like that you're going to have polka dots on your house.
I mean, I feel like that happened no matter what.
In a form-based code, you can't build it. And if you're the neighbor who's going to be offended by that, and it's going to say, oh, you want to build this here with polka dots on it, and there's nothing that says, it's form-based code says you can't do that. I don't have to worry about you doing it. But if you do it and it's outside of form-based code, I can challenge you 6 ways to Sunday. And you won't be able to build.
Form-based code.
but you
I can
build a
challenge,
house.
if there's no form-based code, I can challenge you for decreasing the value of my home by what you're doing, by creating an eyesore, by doing any number of things.
But we
How
don't,
do you challenge that?
you can build a house with polka dots on Skunk Hollow and nobody can say a word.
I'm not sure of that.
Yeah.
You can't object to the people's house color.
The problem is on Skunk Hollow, people might have the resources to challenge and oppose it.
Yeah.
So it's 8:45 and I'm in a position where I'm not sure how we can productively use the next 15 minutes. We can revisit and kind of review, maybe pluck out some of the low-hanging fruit from some of the recommendations that we had put together over a year ago. It feels like that's a meatier conversation than 15 minutes would allow. But I'm open to what you all want to do.
We went about half hour long last week, so.
I mean,
And
Pick our next meeting time.
and your coffee fit hasn't
It's at
done.
least 5 minutes.
So I don't yet hear a motion to adjourn, but maybe I hear a motion to adjourn.
No, motion to adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second then.
Does anyone want to debate the motion that's on the floor? All right, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody. Check your emails, please. I'll schedule something. And in general, does this time work for people?
Yeah.
This 7 o'clock evening time?